Hi guys, my name's Emily. Welcome to Cake and Crime. Today we're going to be talking about 12-year-old Jamarion Lawhorn, who killed 9-year-old Conor Vergerke after he snapped through the abuse he endured. Just to put this out there, this is just information that I found and I've put it all together, and it's my personal opinion. So feel free to do any research if you want to. But for right now, let's just jump into it. We need to go back to the reason why I feel Jamarion snapped and took Conor's life in the first place. Jamarion lived at home with his mother, Anita Lawhorn, and stepfather, Bernard Harold. He had an older brother who was 14 years old and two little sisters who were 7 and 2. The home that they live in was described by officers to be deplorable. The kids didn't have any sheets on their beds, there was large amounts of dirty clothes just scattered throughout the house. Their utilities had recently been shut off and there was barely any food in the entire place. That housed 6 people, mind you. On top of all the neglect for their basic needs, Jamarion was regularly beaten by his mother and his stepfather with literally all sorts. His stepdad was well known for using a belt or an extension cord to whip him on his bum and the back of his legs. In May 2013, Jamarion was beaten so frequently that he'd had enough and he went into school that day and he broke. He started to cry and tell the school and CPS, Child Protective Services, that he was just too scared to go home. He said that Bernard sometimes punches him in his chest and his stomach, and he'd been repeatedly whooped on his bum and the back of his legs with an extension cord. Nothing mentioned about his mum, it was just Bernard. Jamarion had physical scars and bruises from the so-called parental figures that were supposed to take care of him. CPS immediately reported this. Thank God it was noted, to be fair. And there and then that day, Jamarion was removed from his mother's care and placed in his father's care in New York. Jamarion wasn't there long, mind you, as he turned back up at his mother's address. Now, why would he do something like that? Stockholm Syndrome, you ask? No. Couldn't be more than wrong. His biological father and grandmother beat him senseless too. His grandma was a really heavy alcoholic, and his dad was on parole for assault in the 2nd degree and menacing in the 3rd degree against his own girlfriend. I mean, what a man, not. That poor lad, he just couldn't escape the abuse from anywhere, could he? And in all honesty, it must have been a hell of a lot worse than what Anita and Bernard was dishing out, especially for him to run back to them for safety. Jamarion did just up and leave, and CPS didn't actually know that Jamarion had come back to live with his mum and stepdad. But, as you guessed it, as soon as he returned, the beatings resumed as usual. And that brings us up to the horrendous event that we are talking about today. 4th of August 2014, Jamarion was done. He was done with the beatings, he was done with feeling alone, he was just done with life in general. Jamarion had planned for about a year to murder someone with the sole intention of being shot down and killed by the police, or being sentenced to the electric chair. Regardless, dying either way. That day, Jamarion had gone round his house and started to look for some tablets, and he eventually found some little red pills. He had taken quite a few. He honestly hoped that this would help him just end it all. After that, he went into a drawer and grabbed a knife. Because his parents didn't give 2 monkeys, they didn't notice, or probably care anyway, that their child had just left the house with a deadly weapon. Jamarion had made his way down Pine Brook Village, where he went to Kentwood Playground, and upon his arrival he see 9-year-old Conor, 7-year-old Cameron, and their 9-year-old friend playing. He went over and made friends with them. Boys just being boys. Jamarion said that he'd seen them about, but he'd never personally met them before that day. Pretty much as soon as he got there, he quickly hid the knife in the sandbox and took his shirt off. He said he took it off because he didn't want to get blood on it. I mean, that's the least of your worries, boy. All the boys played happily for about 20 minutes until Conor decided he wanted to run up the slide, as most kids do. I know mine do, despite being told not to. Anyway, running up the slide didn't go to plan, and Connor fell straight down and slid to the bottom. Watching this unfold, Jamarion seized his opportunity and approached Connor from behind and stabbed him in the back multiple times and once in his arm. Connor's brother Cameron and their friends saw this happen, and considering they were kids, they acted quite quickly. They got Connor out of there. The friend did actually run home, but 7-year-old Cameron took his brother straight home. He'd ran inside and yelled for his parents to come and help, but Connor had collapsed on the front porch. They both come running out, and Danny Potts, Connor's mum, had sent a blood-curdling shriek throughout the neighbourhood. No parent should ever have to go through that. It makes my blood run cold just the thought of it. Connor's dad, Jared Verkerke, on the other hand, jumped straight into action. He put pressure on his wounds to stop the bleeding as much as he could. Emergency services were called, but sadly Connor Verkerke passed away in his father's arms. He was pronounced dead when they reached the hospital. His last words were pretty much telling his family that he loved him. I couldn't think of a worse nightmare to be in. I mean, how do you come back from that mentally? While all this was happening, Jamarion immediately went out onto the street. He'd asked one of the neighbours, a man by the name of Glenn Stacy, if he could use his phone. Not actually knowing what went on, as he was engrossed in doing his garden, he just handed him the phone, thinking he was trying to phone his mum, but in actual fact, he had called 911.
King County 911, where's your emergency?
I have the address.
Hello, do you have an emergency?
Can I have a police officer at 5657 Madison?
So it's 5657?
Yes.
Okay. And what's happening there?
I just stabbed someone.
You did?
Yes.
Who was it that you just stabbed?
I don't know. I'm fed up with life.
You what?
I'm fed up with life.
Okay, did you stab yourself?
No. Well, I did take a whole bunch of pills to kill myself.
Okay, what's your name?
Jamarion Lawhorn.
What is your first
Come
name?
get me and lock me up forever. For life.
Okay, did you...
Present out. Take me to Jupiter. I don't want to be on this earth anymore. Kill me.
Okay, that person you stabbed, are they there with you?
No.
Where are they?
I don't know. He ran.
He ran off?
Could you hurry up and come and get me?
Yeah, we're on the way, but I'm going to ask you some more questions. Can you spell your first name? I didn't understand it.
Jamarion.
Okay, and your last name?
Lawhorn. Lawhorn.
Okay, and you don't know who this person was that just came up by you?
Nope.
Okay. And do you still have the knife?
No.
Okay. What did you stab them with?
A knife.
Okay. Where is that?
In the grass.
Okay, so it's out in the grass?
Mm-hmm.
And the person you stabbed was a male, right?
Hurry up.
Hurry up, why? What are you doing?
The person just came. They're gonna try to beat me. They're gonna try to beat me, so hurry up and come kill me or take me to jail, do something. Exactly how you do on movies. Give me an electric tray. I don't care how I die. Just in the way.
Okay. All right. Who's there with you? Who did you ask the address of?
Some man. Come kill me.
Who did you ask the address to? Who was that guy?
Excuse me? Can I get your name? Quinn.
Quinn?
Yep.
Okay. Is he there with you? Did he see who you stabbed? What's going on? I don't understand what's going on.
They found the knife too. They found the knife.
Did he get stabbed? Did you stab him?
They're gonna come and kill me. Yes, I did it. Cause I'm fed up with life and I wanna die. I'm ready to kill.
I know it's bad, as he's just killed a little boy he didn't even know. But it's hard not to feel sorry for him. Just listen to the pain and the seriousness in his voice. When police had actually arrived at the scene, they went straight past Jamarion and went on to Kentwood Playground. Jamarion was reportedly angry by this and told them that he was here. He was arrested and was taken back into custody. But while he was in custody, police had actually found some quite disturbing bruises and scars all over him. So they asked Jamarion how he'd got them. He told them that his stepfather had given them to him. He never actually told them that his mother had beaten him, but police knew that Anita Lawhorn had already had her parental rights terminated for her 2 eldest children back in 1996. There were some serious allegations made of severe physical abuse, including unexplained fractures and cigarette burns. How she was allowed to keep having children is well beyond me. Surely CPS should have been on her ass for not caring for the 2 previous children, and yet she continued to have 4 more. I mean, how? Why? What? Anita and Bernard did not get away with the abuse they put Jamarion through. They were sentenced to 1 year, all in all, prison time and 5 years probation. Jamarion had revoked the Fifth Amendment and did not testify in his mother's trial, which in all honesty probably saved her a buckload more jail time. He showed her more love and compassion than she ever done in the 12 years he'd been on the planet. Not that she deserved it. Anita had to go to prison first, while Bernard stayed at home and looked after the 3 remaining children. The children had actually been taken into protective services upon Jamarion's arrest. They were allowed to go home a short time after, but under close observation of CPS. Anita had already been in prison for a little bit of time, so she had only 2 weeks left to do, as her time was technically served. When she got out, Bernard went in to do his time. They both completed their year jail time for physically abusing their child. Let's give them a round of applause, eh? They should have never been allowed children. Ever. But they carried on as normal, and in all honesty, I was shocked to find out CPS had reported that both Anita and Bernard had made outstanding progress. They were providing a nurturing household and actually managed to stay away from drugs. They'd come so far and made some quite major improvements from the day that they arrested Jamarion. But shortly after, Anita, doing what she does best, failed not 1, not 2, but 3 alcohol use tests. This was a condition set as part of her probation. So off she went, straight back to prison. Why she thought she'd get away with this, I don't know. Probably living in La La Land. So while her son was on trial for murder because her and her fella had pushed him to the point of no return, she had actually turned up, shackled and in prison clothes. I mean, come on, let's face it, I doubt she would have made an appearance if she wasn't in custody, in all fairness. What chance did Jamarion actually have with a parent like her? During the trial, Jamarion just looked so scared. He looked so small. He just shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. But every action has a consequence, and Jamarion was just about to face his. And on the 1st of September 2015, Jamarion's trial began. He was 13 years old at this point. He sat there and listened to the evidence, and all that he put Connor through that day. He had to relive his own abuse from his mother and his stepfather, as well as the heartfelt statements from Connor's family. If you would like to watch them, you can actually search them up on YouTube, so just check them out. But I did want to read out Connor's dad's statement, as this made me feel some comparison to how he must have felt on that day. He said, "Since my son's death hit us like a wrecking ball, it's just an understatement. It's wrapped his ugly hand around every part of my life, and still to this day I'm the shell of a person of who I once was." August 3rd, 2014 was the last full day when my family was home. That was my 7th wedding anniversary. We went on a family swimming trip. There are no words to explain holding my dying son in my arms. No way to account the trauma his brothers watching him die. These are my last living memories I have of my son. These scenes replay in my head and make a horror movie look docile in comparison. I say this not to gain sympathy, but to begin to paint an explanation for what this has done to us. I love my son, and not a second goes by, sleeping or awake, that I do not miss him and agonise for what happened to him. Connor was described by his mother as funny and sweet with a flair of theatrics. He wanted to be a music teacher and join the Peace Corps. It never got touched on, but Connor was gender fluid. Danny had said when she'd heard Connor had been stabbed, she was afraid someone had hurt him because they seen him outside before that day playing out in one of his dresses. She worked so hard to protect him while still at the same time allowing him to express himself. She added that there is some comfort knowing that this wasn't a hate crime for him being part of the LGBTQ community. A fund page was set up to help the family with the unexpected cost of the funeral, and within 48 hours it had actually raised $13,000. A candlelit vigil was also held in Connor's memory. At the end of the trial sentencing, Jamarion had written out a statement apologising to Connor's family and promising he'd actually change, and when he got out he'd do anything in his power to help kids not to make the same mistakes he made. I just have to mention this because Anita's behaviour towards her own son actually made me stick to my stomach. But when being escorted back to prison, she didn't even look at her own child that was on trial for murder. She didn't comfort him in any way, shape or form. It just goes to show the love she actually had for him. In my opinion, she seemed to be more bothered about the fact that the judge had called her out for being one abusive mother and doesn't believe that they both hadn't laid hands on him since 2013. Jamarion just looked broken. Jamarion was sentenced to something called a blended sentence, which from what I've researched, so if it's not exactly on point or there's more to it, let me know down in the comments. But it means that the court can propose an adult sentence and delay any impositions pending review on the defendant's behaviour and progress in the juvenile institution or on community innovation. Again, if I've got this slightly wrong or there's more to it, please let me know down in the comments. Jamarion was sentenced to 8 years at Muskegon River Youth Home and after was sentenced to do probation. The youth home was a lockdown secure facility which protected the community from any threats that the juveniles might pose to the public. It included schooling and various forms of counselling which Jamarion so badly needed. There was also a tiered system there where juveniles could earn privileges, basically by abiding by the rules, and would easily lose them for failing to follow the rules. When Jamarion had first gone to the facility, he found it very hard to adjust and reportedly he was getting bullied. He tried to commit suicide on many different occasions. The day he was arrested for the murder of Connor, Jamarion had met a man by the name of Frank Briotus. He was a counsellor, and he said that day that he'd be there for him, and still to this day he's like a father figure to him. That gave Jamarion faith that people do care, and he was just dealt the wrong set of cards, so to speak. He also had the support of a woman by the name of Paula Creswell. She saw his story on the news, and she saw the look of despair and the will to live quickly fading from his eyes. She felt touched and decided to reach out to him. To be honest, Jamarion wasn't in the right state of mind for quite some time, to be fair, but she continued to send the letters and show him that he was cared about. And a year down the line, Jamarion sent a letter back to Paula asking her to come and visit, which she did, and again she to this day has stood by him as a strong mother figure to him. And this one will be a shocker, but it just goes to show you that Jamarion is truly remorseful about what he did. But Connor's grandmother, yes, you heard that right, Connor's grandmother, Toni Noonmaker, had actually forgiven Jamarion a few years into his sentence and had reached out to him. She truly saw and related to what Jamarion went through at the time of her grandson's murder. He had done so well and his progress was actually phenomenal. He had earned the privilege to go out with either Frank, Paula or Toni for 8 hours a month. They went to fast food places, cinema, bowling, etc. Toni had made a statement and said it was a tragedy losing Connor, but it would have been a double tragedy that happened if we'd have lost them both at the same time. And as long as there was any way possible he was coming back from this, I was in. I felt called to do it. Jamarion had done so well and gone above and beyond to rehabilitate himself that the judges said, I think rehabilitation in this case has been tremendously successful, and he was officially released from prison 6.5 years later in March 2021. Jamarion Lawhorn was released from prison, but he was still on probation. And this just so happened 2 weeks before his 19th birthday. Now, speaking of birthdays, this is just weird, but Connor and Jamarion actually shared the same birthday. Today, Connor would have been 17 years old. Every year on their birthday, Jamarion does something special in memory of Connor. as he said Connor would never be forgotten as long as he's alive. As soon as he was released, he kept his word to Connor's parents and stayed on the right track. Jamarion went out almost straight away and found himself a job at a woodwork shop, where they made birdhouses, dog houses, pretty much anything they could make out of wood really. He also gives motivational talks for children just like he once was. And a few children have quoted back what he said in there, which is very important to everyone, I think, so take note. Jamarion said, "We aren't our mistakes." I think he's right. Our mistakes do not define us. As long as we learn from them, there's room for growth. He does a lot of support work and a lot of charity work. The list is just honestly endless. In the first year that Jamarion was released, he had learnt to drive, he signed up to the GRCC classes, he saved and bought his own car and learnt how to swim, and he literally done all of this in the name of Connor. Now I know everyone's not going to agree with this and will no doubt have mixed views here, but I'm personally proud of the way he has changed his life around. You have to remember, an adolescent mind is not the same as the way an adult mind thinks. Plus, actually think the amount of trauma he'd actually been through in his short life is absolutely no excuse for what he did, and rightfully was where he needed to be. But he could have been one of those that fell into the system quite easily. But he broke that vicious cycle he'd only once known. Jamarion still continues to help anyone and everyone that he can, and I really hope he continues to do so, because we all need that someone that will be there no matter what. And what better person to actually understand and relate than someone who's actually been through it and made it out the other side against all the odds. Also, just to put it out there, Connor's parents have absolutely no ill will against Jamarion and say that his life is his. He served his time and he changed his life around for the better. However, they have absolutely no involvement with him. Connor's grandma does, but just not his parents, which is understandable, to be fair. The fact that they hold no ill will towards him is truly amazing, because not everyone thinks the same. Sadly, after Connor's death, his mum and dad got divorced. The death of their son has simply been too much for them. So they went their separate ways, again not holding any ill feeling towards one another. Connor's brother Cameron had years of therapy and had suffered with ongoing nightmares, but they have slowed down as the years have gone by. I do hope he can continue a normal life. Well, as normal can be. And that, my friends, is a wrap. I hope you've enjoyed my first in-depth video. Please be kind and tell me what you think in the comments down below. Do you think he should have served more time? Do you think his time was served and he's better out helping others? Also, if you do want to know what ingredients I've used and the method of the making of this, I will be listing it in the description down below. So if you've liked this video and you feel like helping a sister out, then hit that like button. And if you enjoy my content and want to see more, yes, you know it, hit that subscribe button too. And please, feel free, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask any questions. I'll always try my best to answer them. Drop them down in the comment box, and again, I'll try my best to answer them. It is probably a little bit early, as it is my first in-depth video, but if anyone has any case suggestions they'd like me to do, like to research, I'd be more than interested and more than happy to help. But in the meantime, guys, cake it till you make it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.